James Bond. Casino Royale was the first James Bond book published back in 1953 by Ian Fleming, and it was the first the world ever heard of the MI6 British secret agent James Bond. Audiences seem to typically be more aware of the film franchise James Bond, famously originally played by Sean Connery back in 1962's Dr. No, or at least that was the first James Bond film. Or was it? Nope. We've got to go back to 1954, 1 year after Casino Royale was published. And believe it or not, we have to go back to American TV. And here we find the real first James Bond film, Casino Royale. Barry Nelson, ever heard of him? He played James Bond, also known particularly in this James Bond, Jimmy Bond. Yes, that's right, there was a TV movie, Casino Royale, the first adaptation of James Bond, released on American TV, and it was a 50-minute TV movie. And contrary to popular belief, the film originally did air in colour. It's only known as a black and white James Bond because the only two existing copies of the film nowadays, found around about 1980s, are two black and white copies. Which is a bit of a shame that the film doesn't exist in a colour state anymore. Yeah, known as Jimmy Bond. That's what people called him. There was no Vesper Lind in it either, so if you were looking for that, nope. It's Mathis. Mathis is the Bond girl in this. Not just that old man. He's a she in this. We do get Le Chiffre, but in terms of adapting the book, it's a very short, obviously, and concise version, having to skip a lot of scenes and such, because of course it's a 50-minute TV movie. But they do keep in a lot of the violence, and one scene in particular, they do keep Bond's torture scene. But don't worry, they didn't show it how they showed it in the 2006 Eon Productions James Bond film. It's a very weird interpretation. It's basically James Bond in a bathtub. I'll put it like that. Right at the end of the film as well, as opposed to like 3/4 way through like the other one. Another change is the fact that James Bond is an American operative. Yep, no British Secret Service in this, at least from James Bond, known as Jimmy Bond. I think Felix Leiter was in it as well, but I think he was a British agent, so a bit of role reversal in this. Not sure if that was true, I'll state here whether it was or wasn't. It's been a long time since I've seen this film, basically. This film is available to watch on YouTube for free, although it's not strictly legal. I think it's just somebody's uploaded it. I think you can get it in a copy of the other Casino Royale, because believe it or not, there was another Casino Royale. This time it was a 1967 Casino Royale James Bond parody spoof, released 5 years after Dr. No, with Peter Sellers. Woody Allen's in it as well, and Ursula Andress, who, as most of you will know, famously portrayed the very first Bond girl on screen, or at least in the official canon, Honey Rider. Another one that I wouldn't really recommend. I wouldn't really recommend viewing either of them if you're not really into the whole James Bond series. They're both just a bit boring, really. They're not made by the same people who make the official Eon Productions James Bonds, which is like Sean Connery, George Lazenby, Roger Moore, Timothy Dalton, Pierce Brosnan and Daniel Craig series. Never Say Never Again, not an official James Bond film as much as some people seem to think it is. This was 1983, released just around the time of Octopussy, the official James Bond. Sean Connery's 7th James Bond release, but it's not an official one. It's directed by the same guy who did Thunderball though, so it's a bit of an odd one. And again, not a great film. It has some cool action sequences in it. If you're a huge James Bond fan, basically, why not go ahead and give them a viewing? There's 3 unofficial James Bond films, counting that 1954 Casino Royale there. They shot it live, so it's a bit of an interesting fact if you're going to go ahead and watch it, but it's really hard to get through, so unless you're a big James Bond fan, I wouldn't really recommend it. So yeah, they're not typical James Bond films. They don't have the gun barrel sequence or the James Bond theme, for example. So, you know, that's something that's good to know. So yeah, that's it. Short video. I know this is part of a new series I'm kind of calling Good to Know at the moment. It's just going to be a few minute short videos just based around something that I either know myself that I'm interested in letting you know, or something that I'm interested in learning myself. So it's going to relate around video games, films and TV for now. So yeah, thank you for watching. You know what to do. That sounded really threatening. Hello, I'm Jimmy Bond. Jimmy Bond. That just doesn't work at all.